Well, we were on the Cubs Caravan earlier this week, and let's do the same thing here. Let's take a minute to just think about Ronnie for a few seconds, like 15, 20 seconds. And then for the next half minute or so, I want you to just tell me how you feel about him. Make as much noise, clap, laugh, scream, do whatever you want. But let's just take a minute and think about Ronnie right now. Okay, let's cut loose. What do you think of Ronnie? Thank you for doing that. I'm Pat Hughes from WGN. Ronnie and I worked together for 15 years. And I want to introduce to you the other gentleman that shared the booth with us at various times. On the far end of the table, he was with us, I believe, for 8 years. Now one of the voices of the San Diego Padres, Andy Mazer. Immediate left, he joined us for 2 years. He is now Bob Uecker's partner on Milwaukee radio, Corey Probus. And in the middle, still working with us, with me, and he was with Ronnie and me for the last 2 years, Judd Surratt. Today, we are simply going to tell Ron Santo stories. I'm going to begin, and then we will alternate. And at various points, we want to get the audience involved as well. So if you have a particular story that you want us to tell, that's what we're here for. If you force me to tell a story where his hairpiece was on fire, if you absolutely insist, I will tell that story again. But I thought we would begin by simply telling, at least I'm going to begin, I'm not going to tell you guys what to do, you're all big league broadcasters, but what I'm going to do is tell the story of before our first game ever in the Cactus League, 1996. I came from Milwaukee, a very small market, to Chicago, one of the biggest markets. I was very nervous. I think any broadcaster who goes into a new market, a new audience, there's an element of trepidation. You're not sure. Are they going to like me? There's some fear. But Ron Santo went out of his way to welcome me. I will never forget that as long as I live. He called me where I lived in Arizona the night before our first game. He said, Pat, I know you're nervous. He said, but don't worry about it. You do your thing. You're going to be great. I'm going to do the color. I'm going to be great. He said, we're going to have fun. And if we're lucky, we're going to have some good ball clubs to cover. And it was like the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders. That had an amazingly calming effect on me. And I remember now, the next day, I was not at all nervous for the first game. And after the first half inning, I remember Frank Castillo was pitching for the Cubs. He got into a bases-loaded, no-out jam. He worked out of it. Somebody popped up to Mark Grace. It was a long half inning. Ronnie and I had some interplay and some laughs, some strategy, and I brought him in and asked him about a play or whatever. It was a good half inning. And after it was over, he stood up and he shook my hand with this look on his face like a happy 10-year-old kid. It was like, oh boy, we're going to have a great time working together. And I'm sure it's the same look that he showed his teammates in the dugout as a player after they had made a great catch or had a big game-winning hit or something like that. But that was the start of it, and that's the way I wanted to begin our session today. But I will never forget that. And Andy, since you were the first guy to work with us, do you recall some of your earliest memories of working with Ron Santo?
Well, Pat, I think that I go back to spring training in 1999, and it was the first time I was actually covering a Major League Baseball team, and I had no idea. I mean, I knew who these guys were. Obviously, growing up as a Cubs fan, watching everybody on TV and watching everybody play and listening to these guys describe the action. But Ron was the same way with me. I mean, the arms were wide open the first time I ever met him. I was intimidated to meet him for the first time because it was the first time that I ever had met somebody that I had seen play and was larger than life, because Ron Santo was larger than life. And welcomed me right in, took me into the clubhouse, said, anybody you want to meet, you let me know. Anybody gives you a problem, you let me know. And it was serious, because with him, if you had him by your side, you had instant credibility, because the players in the clubhouse respected him so much and loved to see him so much that if you were with Ron, you were okay in their book. And it made things very easy, because he made me feel right at home right away.
Corey, I remember when you showed up in the spring of about 2007. He had not officially been hired yet, and he was wearing a three-piece suit in a Cactus League game in Mesa, Arizona. I had never seen a three-piece suit in that ballpark. You look great. You look great today. But tell us about your first memories working with the great Ron Santo.
Yeah, I remember telling Ron that, I was wearing my bar mitzvah suit. First time I was out there. And today I'm in my wedding suit. So this is kind of how this worked for me. But you're right, Pat. It was March of 2007. And kind of go back a little bit, it was a wild week for me. It was the last week of spring training. And I was still working and living in Birmingham, Alabama. So I got the job on a Monday. And the Cubs were going to be in Las Vegas for 2 games against Seattle, Friday and Saturday, before opening the season the following Monday in Cincinnati. So it was a wild week. I went from Birmingham, Alabama, to driving to Chicago, unpacking, packing to go out to Vegas, and I was on the air with Pat Ron on Friday. But that first game that I did was Saturday, and I was pretty loud, wasn't I?
You were a little bit loud. The game was in Las Vegas. They could hear Corey without a microphone all the way in Reno, I understand. It worked out fine.
Yeah, but I was so nervous that first game. I grew up in the Chicagoland area. I grew up, like Andy said, listening to Pat Ron forever. And here I was working with these guys, and I don't think I did too well that first game against Seattle, my first broadcast. So I'm on the charter, and we're flying to Cincinnati, and about halfway through the flight, I'm sitting up against the window. There's an empty seat to my right. Here comes Ron Santo. He's walking back to sit next to me and to kind of give me some coaching, to give me some encouragement about relax, have some fun. I mean, for a half hour, here's Ron Santo. I'm a 28-year-old kid. I just was working on Cubs radio for about 6 hours, and Ron is sitting next to me for about a half hour, just kind of giving me some advice. Relax, we're going to have some fun. Just be yourself. You cannot not have fun working on Cubs radio. And that's kind of what he was telling me that very first day. And I'll be forever grateful to Number 10 for doing that, because after that, I really started to feel more and more comfortable each and every day.
He went out of his way, and Judd, I vividly remember your first game in the spring. I remember the open of the pregame show, and I'm going to let you tell that story with Ron Santo.
I knew you'd remember that. Like these guys, so nervous, and Ronnie was so welcoming. But just a couple of minutes before we hit the air, I just wanted to talk with Ronnie about what you wanted to go through, anything you wanted to stay away from, anything you wanted to touch on. You do what you talk about, anything you want. I'll go wherever you want. Okay. So we start. Welcome to the Cubs Central pregame show here in Mesa. It's going to be the Cubs and the Angels today. Ronnie, we're going to get our first look at Sean Marshall in the rotation this spring.
I don't know if he even had his headset on at this point.
He did it. He did it. And you have to remember, for those games, Matt Foltz is not down there. And Matt is the guy that kept Humpty Dumpty together. So, he's signing autographs. There's a huge line of people. That's fine. Well, Sean Marshall's had a terrific spring. He's a very promising young left-hander. So we get through the segment, and I go to the break, and Pat walks over. That was very good, Judd. I'm very impressed by your composure. I wasn't even paying attention to the fact that we were on the air.
I think I said, welcome to my world.
But the other story I remember, to try and help Pat and Ron, I'll write down a few notes, a few stats, just something. If there's something maybe that Pat asked, I'll jump on the internet, go grab the answer. But I didn't realize that Ronnie, when he would read things, would put them right next to his eyeballs, as though the information would absorb through his eyes. So I think I handed him some note, and so Ronnie would put it, he would look at it like this. So guys are flying around the bases, balls are heading out to all parts of the field, and Pat's not getting any reaction for like 2 or 3 batters. So the inning ends, and he says to me, "Judd, if you want to have something read on the air, why don't you give it to me?"
Or read it yourself, Judd. We had so much fun with this hairpiece, it was unbelievable. I feel obligated to tell the story, and I will, because I love telling it, and I hope you still love hearing it. When his hair, and Andy has a great story about his hairpiece as well, that he's going to follow up with. So we're at Shea Stadium, early 2003 season, a cold night. We're standing for the national anthem. They had this old-fashioned electric heater that kind of glowed a bright orange when you turned it on. Ron didn't notice the glow, apparently. He was standing a little too close to the heater. All of a sudden, I hear something sizzling like bacon on a stove. And then I smell something burning. And then I hear Ronnie say, "Shoot!" I cleaned that up because this is going to be broadcast on WGN radio in the future. Shoot! I look over, Ron Santo's hairpiece is on fire. Smoke is actually billowing out the top of his head. He's got this silly look on his face. And he said, "What happened?" I said, "Ronnie, I think you stood too close to the heater." And now it's in pain. So I poured a little water on his head and put it out. And Ronnie always took a lot of pride in the way he looked, so he said, "How do I look?" And I lied. I said, "Doesn't look that bad to me." It actually looked like a pro golfer had taken a pitching wedge and whacked one right up the top of his head. Big divot right in the middle of his head. So we do the game, and Ronnie always thought it was funny later that the Mets starting pitcher that night was Al Leiter. And that is a true story. Parts of that were embellished, but he did actually burn his hairpiece at Shea Stadium, and it was on fire there for a few seconds. But Andy, I know you've got a glorious story as well.
Well, that hairpiece was the #1, but then it quickly became the gamer because it was not able to be worn on a night on the town. But I had seen Ron without his toupee on 2 occasions, and the first time I didn't know who it was. And both times were in St. Louis, and one time I had taken his bag into my room off the bus, and he needed it, so he knocked on my door, and he did not have the toupee on, and I was thinking, who's this strange guy that's knocking on my door? Looking for Ron Santo's bag. It happened to be him. The second time, also in St. Louis, I get this phone call about 30 minutes before the bus was going to depart for the ballpark, and he says to me, "Do you have a baseball hat with you?" I said, "Yeah, I always bring it. Bring it over here." So I was always very close to him in rooms. We either had rooms that were right next to each other or right across the hall, so I walked down. He answered the door without his toupee on again, and didn't like the baseball hat I brought him. And I said, "Well, you got 2 choices here." I said, "Either you wear the hat, or you go without it, or we try to find your toupee because you lost it." How do you lose a toupee in a hotel room? Only Ron could do that, and we spent the next 5 to 10 minutes tearing that room apart. We looked under the bed, we looked in the drawers, we looked under the pillows, I looked in the shower, we were looking under the sheets and through the drapes, and trying to figure out where he'd been in the room, where he would have had it, that he would have taken it off and not known where it was. So his cell phone rings, and it's his grandson Sam that was on the phone, and he's talking to Sam on the bed. And I wandered over to the desk and thinking, okay, well maybe he was sitting here at the desk for some reason reading the paper or whatever. And I started rifling through a bunch of papers that were stacked up about yay high here to right near the light on the desk. And I noticed this Federal Express box. So I pick up the Federal Express box, and hanging from the Federal Express box was what looked like a dead animal. It was the #1. It was the toupee. Now, normally you would think that someone would find this and then, take the toupee off and bring it to him. No. I took the box over to him, let him take the toupee off himself. But he could not believe that it was, the Cubs had sent him some things to autograph, and he must have taken it off, put it on the desk, and it was attached to the Federal Express box, and I'm telling you, it looked like a dead animal.